A lone prisoner stands trembling in a bare, silent room. Just minutes ago, guards pulled him from his cell without warning. Now, stripped completely out of his uniform, he stands as officers fasten his wrists and ankles to a solid A-shaped wooden frame, the caning trestle. His body is bent sharply forward, locked in place. A strip of protective padding is wrapped around his lower back to shield his kidneys and spine, but his lower body remains fully exposed, the intended target of the punishment. Behind him, a trained prison officer steps forward, calm and composed. In his hands, a 1.2-meter rattan cane, thick as a grown man's thumb. The room goes silent. Then, crack! The first stroke lands like a gunshot. The prisoner jolts violently. A red welt rises across his skin, quickly breaking open. He gasps. The pain is instant, sharp, and blinding. And there are still 11 more to come. In the corner, a prison doctor watches closely for any sign of collapse, while other inmates, next in line for their own punishment, peer through a small window, their faces pale and tight with dread. By the third stroke, the skin is completely damaged, and bleeding appears. The straps hold him firm. There's no escape. When it's over, the guards untie him. Shaking and broken, he whispers, "Thank you," phrases expected before he's allowed to leave. This isn't ancient history. This is modern Singapore, a global financial hub where judicial caning remains a court-sanctioned punishment. But how did a high-tech first world city come to employ a punishment many consider medieval? Let's find out. Singapore's caning system traces its roots to the British colonial era of the 19th century. As a former British colony, Singapore inherited many legal practices of the British Empire, including corporal punishment. Caning or whipping was a common penalty under English rule, written into the Indian Penal Code of 1860, which British colonies adopted for offences like robbery, housebreaking, and sexual assault. In 1871, when the Straits Settlements, including Singapore, enacted a penal code modelled on the Indian Code, judicial whipping became part of local law. British officials of that time believed in the lash as a tool to subdue crime and natives. Even though in Britain itself, judicial caning was never used, the British preferred flogging by birch rod or the cat-o'-nine-tails. By the mid-20th century, the winds of change saw Britain abolish corporal punishment. Flogging was outlawed in the UK by 1948. However, newly independent Singapore took the opposite path. In the post-independence drive to maintain public order, Singapore's leaders expanded the scope of caning beyond what the British had ever applied. The Criminal Law Temporary Provisions Act 1955 first widened caning use, and in 1966, amid concerns over vandalism and hooliganism, Singapore introduced the Vandalism Act, making caning a mandatory punishment for defacing public property. By 1967, amendments to the law had increased the range of caning offences to at least 35. In effect, a punishment once reserved for a narrow set of violent crimes under colonial rule was broadened to encompass various social ills in the young nation. Rising gang violence, drug trafficking, and even immigration violations were all targeted with the cane, reflecting a belief that a fearsome deterrent was needed to build a safe, law-abiding society. Over the decades, judicial caning became deeply embedded in Singapore's justice system. Unlike many countries that phased out corporal punishment in the late 20th century, Singapore, alongside its neighbour Malaysia, remained one of the world's most active practitioners of judicial caning. Not everyone in Singapore's prisons will face the cane, but for some, it's written into the law, stroke by stroke. Judicial caning in Singapore isn't just reserved for violent criminals. In fact, more than 30 different offences under Singaporean law can lead to the cane. Some are crimes you'd expect: armed robbery, rape, gang violence, but others might surprise you: overstaying your visa by more than 90 days. That's 3 strokes. Spray painting a wall? That's vandalism. Also 3 strokes. Trafficking drugs? You could get the maximum, 24 strokes, plus the death penalty. And in many cases, the cane isn't optional, it's mandatory. Judges don't get to weigh alternatives. If you're convicted of certain crimes, the strokes come with the sentence, no matter who you are. But there are some boundaries. Only males between 18 and 50 years old can be caned. Women are legally exempt, so are men over 50 or anyone with a medical condition that makes caning a health risk. Before the punishment is carried out, every prisoner must pass a medical exam. A prison doctor checks blood pressure, heart rate, and physical condition. If they're deemed unfit, the caning is stopped. But for those who are cleared, there's no turning back. Whether it's 3 strokes for illegal entry or 24 for smuggling heroin, once the sentence is approved, the process begins behind closed doors. And it's not rare. In 1994, Singapore's caning system made global headlines. Michael Fay, an 18-year-old American student, was sentenced to 6 strokes of the cane for vandalism, including spray painting cars and stealing road signs. Under Singapore's Vandalism Act, the punishment was mandatory. But in the US, the news caused outrage. Many viewed the sentence as extreme, especially for a non-violent offense. Even President Bill Clinton stepped in, formally requesting clemency. Singapore responded, but only slightly. Fay's sentence was reduced to 4 strokes, not cancelled. In May 1994, the caning was carried out. Some Americans were horrified. Others said he got what he deserved. But for Singapore, the message was clear. Foreigners are not above the law. The case strained diplomatic ties for a time, but inside Singapore, it only reinforced the country's hardline reputation and the belief that tough laws keep society safe. Michael Fay wasn't the only foreigner to face the cane. In 2019, a British citizen was sentenced to 24 strokes for drug trafficking, prompting the UK government to call the punishment barbaric. Singapore stood firm. A Malaysian man received 15 strokes for robbery. A Swiss national was caned for vandalizing public transport infrastructure, and a Japanese citizen received 20 strokes for sexual assault. Every year, hundreds more, often from Bangladesh, Indonesia, Myanmar, India, and other countries, are caned, most commonly for immigration violations, theft, or drug-related offenses. Regionally, countries like Malaysia and Brunei also use judicial caning, but Singapore gets the most attention, largely because of its modern global image. Judicial caning in Singapore isn't just about law enforcement, it's about pain that's deliberately engineered into the system. Each stroke of the cane is designed to cause maximum damage without killing. The rattan cane cuts through flesh with every strike, not just bruising, but open wounds and bleeding. Medical staff are always present, but they're not there to stop the pain, just to make sure the prisoner survives it. Former inmates describe the experience as beyond anything they could have imagined. The pain is sharp, blinding, and immediate. Some lose consciousness by the 4th or 5th stroke. Others remain awake, trembling, gritting their teeth, trying not to scream, but most do. After the caning, the prisoner is taken to a medical bay. The wounds are treated with antiseptic. Painkillers are minimal. Sleep becomes impossible. Sitting, even worse. Some prisoners stand for days because lying on their backs or sitting on a bench is too painful. In the weeks that follow, the wounds scab over, but the scars remain permanently. For many, these scars are a lifelong reminder, not just of the crime, but of the pain they endured. But the impact goes far beyond the physical. Many prisoners speak of long-term trauma, anxiety, flashbacks, nightmares. Some say they hear the swish of the cane in their sleep. Others describe the humiliation of being stripped, restrained, and broken in front of others. For many, it isn't the pain they remember most, but the fear, the powerlessness, the silence of the room. Still, in Singapore, caning is widely accepted. Supporters argue it's effective. They point to low crime rates, clean streets, a safe society. Harsh laws work, they say. The cane keeps order. Critics, both local and international, call it torture. Organizations like Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch have condemned Singapore's caning system for years, calling it cruel, inhumane, and degrading. They argue that inflicting pain to enforce discipline crosses a a line many other developed countries have left behind. To critics, the contradiction is clear. How can a clean first world city still use a punishment from the colonial past? To supporters, the answer is simpler. It works. The government has stood firm, courts have upheld the practice, and for now, the rattan cane still swings. What do you think? Should Singapore continue using caning, or is it time to leave it in the past? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you found this video informative, don't forget to subscribe for more stories. Thank you for watching.